Chapter 18. The Dying of the Dragons. The short, sad reign of Aegon II. The time for hiding is done, King Aegon II declared on Dragonstone, after Sunfire had feasted on his sister. Let the ravens fly that the realm may know the pretender is dead, and their true king is coming home to reclaim his father's throne. Yet even true kings may find some things more easily proclaimed than accomplished. The moon would wax and wane and wax again before Aegon II took his leave of Dragonstone. Between him and King's Landing lay the Isle of Driftmark, the whole breadth of Blackwater Bay, and scores of prowling Valyrian warships. With the sea snake a guest of Trystane Truefire in King's Landing and Sir Adam dead at Tumbleton, command of the Valyrian fleets now rested with Adam's brother, Alan, the younger son of Mouse, the shipwright's daughter, a boy of 15. But would he be friend or foe? His brother had died fighting for the queen, but that same queen had made their lord a captive and was herself dead. Ravens were dispatched to Driftmark offering House Valyrian pardon for all its past offenses if Alan of Hull would present himself on Dragonstone and swear allegiance. But until and unless an answer was received, it would be folly for Aegon II to try to cross the bay by ship and risk capture. Nor did his grace wish to sail to King's Landing. In the days following his half-sister's death, the king still clung to the hope that Sunfire might recover enough strength to fly again. Instead, the dragon only seemed to weaken further, and soon the wounds in his neck began to stink. Even the smoke he exhaled had a foul smell to it, and toward the end he would no longer eat. On the 9th day of the 12th moon of 130 AC, the magnificent golden dragon that had been King Aegon's glory died in the outer yard of Dragonstone where he had fallen. His grace wept, and gave orders that his cousin Lady Baela be brought up from the dungeons and put to death. Only when her head was on the block did he repent, when his maester reminded him that the girl's mother had been a Valyrian, the sea snake's own daughter. Another raven took wing for Driftmark, this time with a threat. Unless Alan of Hull presented himself within a fortnight to do homage to his rightful liege, his cousin the Lady Baela would lose her head. On the western shores of Blackwater Bay, meanwhile, the Moon of the Three Kings came to a sudden end when an army appeared outside the walls of King's Landing. For more than half a year the city had lived in fear of Ormond Hightower's advancing host. But when the assault came, it came not from Alltown by way of Bitterbridge and Tumbleton, but up the King's Road from Storm's End. Barras Baratheon, on hearing of the Queen's death, had left his newly pregnant wife and 4 daughters to strike north through the Kingswood with 600 knights and 4,000 foot. When the Baratheon vanguard was seen across the Blackwater Rush, the shepherd commanded his followers to rush the river to keep Lord Boros from coming ashore. But only hundreds now came to listen to this beggar who'd once preached to tens of thousands, and few obeyed. Atop Aegon's high hill, the squire now calling himself King Trystane Truefire stood on the battlements with Larry Strong and Sir Perkin the Flea, gazing at the swelling ranks of Stormlanders. "We do not have the strength to oppose such a host, sire," Lord Larrys told the boy, "but perhaps words can succeed where swords must fail. Send me to parley with them." And so the clubfoot was dispatched across the river under a flag of truce, accompanied by Grand Maester Orwyle and the Dowager Queen Alicent. The Lord of Storm's End received them in a pavilion on the edge of the Kingswood, as his men felled trees to build rafts for the river crossing. There Queen Alicent received the glad news that her granddaughter Jaehaera, the only surviving child of her son Aegon and daughter Helaena, had been delivered safely to Storm's End by Sir Willis Fell of the Kingsguard. The Dowager Queen wept tears of joy. Betrayals and betrothals followed, until an accord was reached between Lord Boros, Lord Larrys, and Queen Alicent, with Grand Maester Orwyle as witness. The clubfoot promised that Sir Perkin and his gutter knights would join the Stormlanders in restoring King Aegon II to the Iron Throne, on the condition that all of them save the pretender Trystane would be pardoned for any and all offenses, including high treason, rebellion, robbery, murder, and rape. Queen Alicent agreed that her son King Aegon would make Lady Cassandra, Lord Boros's eldest daughter, his new queen. Lady Floris, another of his lordship's daughters, was to be betrothed to Larry Strong. The problem posed by the Valyrian fleet was discussed at some length. "We must bring the sea snake into this," Lord Baratheon is reported to have said. "Perhaps the old man would like a new young wife. I have 2 daughters not yet spoken for. He is traitor thrice over," Queen Alicent said. "Rhaenyra could never have taken King's Landing but for him. His grace my son will not have forgotten. I want him dead. He will die soon enough in any case," replied Lord Larry Strong. "Let us make our peace with him now, and make what use of him we can. Once all is safely settled, if we have no further need of House Valyrian, we can always lend the stranger a hand." And so it was agreed, most shamefully. The envoys returned to King's Landing, and the Stormlanders soon followed, crossing the Blackwater Rush without incident. Lord Boros found the city walls unmanned, the gates undefended, the streets and squares empty save for corpses. As he climbed Aegon's high hill with his banner-bearer and household shields, he saw the ragged banners of the Squire Trystane hauled down from the gatehouse battlements, and the golden dragon banner of King Aegon II raised in their stead. Queen Alicent herself emerged from the Red Keep to bid him welcome, with Sir Perkin the Flea beside her. "Where is the pretender?" Lord Boros asked, as he dismounted in the outer ward. "Taken and in chains," replied Sir Perkin. Seasoned by countless border clashes with the Dornish and his recent victorious campaign against a new Vulture King, Lord Boros Baratheon wasted no time in restoring order to King's Landing. After a night of quiet celebration in the Red Keep, he rode forth the next day against Visenya's Hill and the Cunny King, Daemon Palehair. Columns of armored knights climbed the hill from 3 directions, riding down the street scum, sellswords, and drunkards who had gathered round the little king and putting them to rout. The young monarch, who had celebrated his 5th name day only 2 days previous, was carried back to the Red Keep slung over the back of a horse, chained and weeping. His mother walked behind him, clutching the hand of the Dornish woman Sylvena Sand and leading a long column of whores, witch women, cutpurses, sneaks, and sots, the surviving remnants of the Palehair court. The shepherd's turn came the next night. Forewarned by the fate of the whores and their little king, the prophet had called upon his barefoot army to assemble around the dragon pit and defend the hill of Rhaenys with blood and iron. But the shepherd's star had fallen. Fewer than 300 came in answer to his call, and many of those fled when the assault began. Lord Boros led his knights up the hill from the west, whilst Sir Perkin and his gutter knights climbed the steeper southern slope from Flea Bottom. Crashing through the thin ranks of defenders into the ruins of the dragon pit, they found the prophet amongst the dragon heads, now far gone in rot, surrounded by a ring of torches, still preaching of doom and devastation. When he spied Lord Boros on his warhorse, the shepherd pointed his stump at him and cursed him. "We shall meet in hell before this year is done," the begging brother proclaimed. Like Daemon Palehair, he was taken alive and carried back to the Red Keep bound in chains. Thus did peace return to King's Landing, after a fashion. In the name of her son, our true king, Aegon, second of his name, Queen Alicent proclaimed a curfew, making it unlawful to be on the city streets after dark. The city watch was reformed under the command of Sir Perkin the Flea to enforce the curfew, whilst Lord Boros and his Stormlanders manned the city's gates and battlements. Pulled down from their 3 hills, the 3 false kings languished in the dungeons, awaiting the true king's return. That return hinged upon the Velaryons of Driftmark, however. Behind the walls of the Red Keep, the Dowager Queen Alicent and Lord Larry Strong had offered the Sea Snake his freedom, a full pardon for his treasons, and a place on the king's small council if he would bend his knee to Aegon II as his king and deliver them the swords and sails of Driftmark. The old man had proved to be surprisingly intractable, however. "My knees are old and stiff and do not bend easily," Lord Corlys responded, before setting forth terms of his own. He wanted pardons not only for himself, but for all those who had fought for Queen Rhaenyra, and demanded further that Aegon the Younger be given Princess Jaehaera's hand in marriage, so the 2 of them might jointly be proclaimed King Aegon's heirs. "The realm has been split asunder," he said. "We must needs join it back together." Lord Baratheon's daughters did not interest him, but he wanted Lady Baela freed at once. Queen Alicent was outraged by Lord Valerion's arrogance, Muncan tells us, especially his demand that Queen Rhaenyra's Aegon be named as heir to her own Aegon. She had suffered the loss of 2 of her 3 sons and her only daughter during the dance, and could not bear the thought that any of her rival sons should live. Angrily, her grace reminded Lord Corlys that she had twice proposed terms of peace to Rhaenyra, only to have her overtures rejected with scorn. It fell to Lord Larys the Clubfoot to pour oil on the troubled waters, calming the queen with a quiet reminder of all they had discussed in Lord Baratheon's tent, and persuading her to consent to the Sea Snake's proposals. The next day Lord Corlys Velaryon, the Sea Snake, knelt before Queen Alicent as she sat upon the lower steps of the Iron Throne, as proxy for her son, and there pledged the king his loyalty and that of his house. Before the eyes of gods and men, the Queen Dowager granted him and his a royal pardon, and restored him to his old place on the small council, as admiral and master of ships. Ravens went forth to Driftmark and Dragonstone to announce the accord. And not a day too soon, for they found young Alan Velaryon gathering his ships for an attack on Dragonstone, and King Aegon II preparing once again to behead his cousin Baela. In the waning days of 130 AC, King Aegon II returned at last to King's Landing, accompanied by Sir Marston Waters, Sir Alfred Broom, the two Toms, and Lady Baela Targaryen, still in chains, for fear she might attack the king if freed. Escorted by 12 Valyrian war galleys, they sailed upon a battered old trading cog named Mouse, owned and captained by Marilda of Hull. If Mushroom may be trusted, the choice of vessel was deliberate. Lord Allen might have shipped the king home aboard Lord Athen's Glory or Morning Tide or even Spicetown Girl, but he wanted him seen to be creeping into the city on a mouse, the dwarf says. Lord Allen was an insolent boy and did not love his king. The king's return was far from triumphant. Still unable to walk, his grace was brought through the river gate in a closed litter, and carried up Aegon's high hill to the Red Keep through a silent city, past deserted streets, abandoned homes, and looted shops. The steep, narrow steps of the Iron Throne proved impossible for him as well. Henceforth, the restored king must needs hold court from a carved, cushioned wooden seat at the base of the true throne, with a blanket across his twisted, shattered legs. Though in great pain, the king did not retreat to his bedchamber again, nor avail himself of dreamwine or milk of the poppy, but immediately set to pronouncing judgment upon the 3 Dayfly kings, who had ruled King's Landing during the Moon of Madness. The squire was the first to face his wrath, and was sentenced to die for high treason. A brave boy, Trystane was at first defiant when dragged before the Iron Throne, until he saw Sir Perkin the Flea standing with the king. That took the heart from him, says Mushroom, but even then the youth did not plead his innocence nor beg for mercy, but asked only that he might be made a knight before he died. This boon King Aegon granted, whereupon Sir Marston Waters dubbed the lad, his fellow bastard, Sir Trystane Truefire, the name the boy had bestowed upon himself, being deemed presumptuous, and Sir Alfred Broom struck his head off with Blackfire, the sword of Aegon the Conqueror. The fate of the cunning king, Daemon Palehair, was kinder. Having just turned 5, the boy was spared on account of his youth and made a ward of the crown. His mother, Essie, who had presumed to style herself Lady Esselyn during her son's brief reign, confessed under torture that Daemon's father was not the king, as she had previously claimed, but rather a silver-haired oarsman off a trading galley from Lee. Being lowborn and unworthy of the sword, Essie and the Dornish whore Sylvana Sand were hanged from the battlements of the Red Keep, together with 27 other members of King Daemon's court, an ill-favored assortment of thieves, drunkards, mummers, beggars, whores, and panders. Lastly, King Aegon II turned his attention to the shepherd. When brought before the Iron Throne for judgment, the prophet refused to repent his crimes or admit to treason, but thrust the stump of his missing hand at the king and told his grace, "We shall meet in hell before this year is done," the same words he had spoken to Boros Baratheon upon his capture. For that insolence, Aegon had the shepherd's tongue torn out with hot pincers, then condemned him and his treasonous followers to death by fire. On the last day of the year, 241, barefoot lambs, the shepherd's most fervid and devoted followers, were covered with pitch and chained to poles along the broad cobbled thoroughfare that ran eastward from Cobbler's Square up to the Dragon Pit. As the city's seps rang their bells to signal the end of the old year and the coming of the new, King Aegon II proceeded along the street thereafter known as Shepherd's Way, rather than Hill Street as before, in his litter, whilst his knights rode to either side, setting their torches to the captive lambs to light his way. Thus did his grace continue up the hill to the very top, where the shepherd himself was bound amongst the heads of the 5 dragons. Supported by 2 of his kingsguard, King Aegon rose from his cushions, tottered to the pole where the prophet had been chained, and set him aflame with his own hand. Rhaenyra the Pretender was gone, her dragons dead, the mummer kings all fallen, and yet the realm knew not peace. Septon Eustace wrote soon after. With his half-sister slain and her only surviving son a captive at his own court, King Aegon II might reasonably have expected the remaining opposition to his rule to melt away. And mayhaps it might have done so if his grace had heeded Lord Valerion's counsel and issued a general pardon for all those lords and knights who had espoused the queen's cause. Alas, the king was not of a forgiving mind. Urged on by his mother, the Queen Dowager Alicent, Aegon II was determined to exact vengeance upon those who had betrayed and deposed him. He started with the Crownlands, sending forth his own men and the Stormlanders of Boros Baratheon against Rosby, Stokeworth, and Duskendale and the surrounding keeps and villages. Though the lords thus accosted, through their stewards and castellans, were quick to lower Rhaenyra's quartered banner and raise Aegon's golden dragon in its stead, each in turn was brought in chains to King's Landing and forced to do obeisance before the king. Nor were they freed until they had agreed to pay a heavy ransom, and provide the crown with suitable hostages. This campaign proved a grave mistake, for it only served to harden the hearts of the late queen's men against the king. Reports soon reached King's Landing of warriors gathering in great numbers at Winterfell, Barrowden, and White Harbor. In the Riverlands, the aged and bedridden Lord Grover Tully had finally died, of apoplexy from having his house fight against the rightful king at Second Tumbleton, Mushroom says, and his grandson Elmo, now at last the Lord of Riverrun, had called the Lords of the Trident to war once more, lest he suffer the same fate as Lords Rosby, Stokeworth, and Darklan. To him gathered Benjicot Blackwood of Raventry, already a seasoned warrior at 3 and 10, his fierce young aunt, Black Ally, with 300 bows, Lady Sabbatha Frey, the merciless and grasping lady of the twins, Lord Hugo Vance of Wayfarer's Rest, Lord Jorah Mallister of Seagard, Lord Roland Derry of Derry, aye, and even Humphrey Bracken, Lord of Stonehenge, whose house had hitherto supported King Aegon's cause. Even more grave were the tidings from the Vale, where Lady Jane Eyre had assembled 1,500 knights and 8,000 men at arms, and sent envoys to the Bravo Sea to arrange for ships to bring them down upon King's Landing. With them would come a dragon. Lady Rhaena of House Targaryen, brave Baela's twin, had brought a dragon's egg with her to the Vale, an egg that had proved fertile, bringing forth a pale pink hatchling with black horns and crest. Rhaena named her Morning. Though years would need to pass before Morning grew large enough to be ridden to war, the news of her birth nonetheless was of great concern to the Green Council. If the rebels could flaunt a dragon and the loyalists could not, Queen Alicent pointed out, small folk might see their foes as more legitimate. I need a dragon, Aegon II said when he was told. Aside from Lady Rhaena's hatchling, only 3 living dragons remained in all of Westeros. Sheepstealer had vanished with the girl Nettles, but was thought to be somewhere in Crackclaw Point or the Mountains of the Moon. The cannibal still haunted the eastern slopes of the Dragonmont. Silverwing at last report had departed the desolation at Tumbleton for the Reach, and was said to have made her lair on a small, stony isle in the middle of Red Lake. Queen Alysanne's silvery she-dragon had accepted a second rider, Boros Baratheon pointed out. Why not a third? Claim the dragon and your crown is secure. But Aegon II was as yet unable to walk or stand, much less mount and ride a dragon. Nor was his grace strong enough for a long journey across the realm to Red Lake, through regions infested with traitors, rebels, and broken men. That answer was no answer, plainly. Not Silverwing, his grace declared. I will have a new Sunfire, prouder and fiercer than the last. So ravens were sent to Dragonstone, where the eggs of the Targaryen dragons, some so old they had turned to stone, were kept under guard in undervaults and cellars. The maester there chose 7, in honor of the gods, that he deemed most promising, and sent them to King's Landing. King Aegon kept them in his own chambers, but none yielded a dragon. Mushroom tells us his grace sat on a large purple and gold egg, for a day and a night, hoping to hatch it, but it had as well been a purple and gold turd for all the good it did. Grand Maester Orwyle, free of the dungeons and once more adorned with his chain of office, gives us a detailed look inside the restored Green Council during this troubled time, when fear and suspicion held sway even within the Red Keep. At the very time when unity was most desperately required, the lords around King Aegon II found themselves deeply divided, and unable to agree on how best to deal with the gathering storm. The sea snake favored reconciliation, pardon, and peace. Boros Baratheon scorned that course as weakness. He would defeat these traitors in the field, he declared to king and council. All he required was men. Castle Rock and Alltown should be commanded to raise fresh armies at once. Sir Tyland Lannister, the blind master of coin, proposed to sail to Lear Tyrosh and engage one or more sellsword companies. Aegon II did not lack for coin, as Sir Tyland had placed 3/4 of the crown's wealth safely in the hands of Castle Rock, Alltown, and the Iron Bank of Bravos before Queen Rhaenyra seized the city and the treasury. Lord Valerion saw such efforts as futile. We do not have the time. Children sit in the seats of power at Alltown and Castle Rock. We will find no more help there. The best free companies are bound by contract to Lee, Myr, or Tyrosh. Even if Sir Tyland could prize them loose, he could not bring them here in time. My ships can keep the errands from our door, but who will stop the Northmen and the Lords of the Trident? They are already on the march. We must make terms. His grace should absolve them of all their crimes and treasons, proclaim Rhaenyra's Aegon his heir, and marry him at once to Princess Jaehaera. It is the only way. The old man's words fell upon deaf ears, however. Queen Alicent had reluctantly agreed to the betrothal of her granddaughter to Rhaenyra's son, but she had done so without the king's consent. Aegon II had other ideas. He wished to marry Cassandra Baratheon at once, for, she will give me strong sons, worthy of the Iron Throne. Nor would he allow Prince Aegon to wed his daughter, and perhaps sire sons who might muddy the succession. He can take the black and spend his days at the wall, his grace decreed, or else give up his manhood and serve me as a eunuch. The choice is his, but he shall have no children. My sister's line must end. Even that was thought to be too gentle a course by Sir Tywin Lannister, who argued for the immediate execution of Prince Aegon the Younger. The boy will remain a threat so long as he draws breath, Lannister declared. Remove his head, and these traitors will be left with neither queen nor king nor prince. The sooner he is dead, the sooner this rebellion will end. His words, and those of the king, horrified Lord Valerion. The aged sea snake, thunderous in his wrath, accused king and council of being fools, liars, and oathbreakers, and stormed from the chamber. Boros Baratheon then offered to bring the king the old man's head, and Aegon II was on the point of giving consent when Lord Larry Strong spoke up, reminding them that young Alan Valerion, the sea snake's heir, remained beyond their reach on Driftmark. Kill the old snake and we lose the young one, the clubfoot said, and all those fine swift ships of theirs as well. Instead, he said, they must move at once to make amends with Lord Corlys, so as to keep House Valerion on their side. Give him his betrothal, your grace, he urged the king. A betrothal is not a wedding. Name young Aegon your heir. A prince is not a king. Look back at the history and count how many heirs never lived to sit the throne. Deal with Driftmark in due course, when your foes are vanquished and your tide is at the full. That day is not yet come. We must bide our time and speak to him gently. Or so his words have come down to us, from Orwyle by way of Munkin. Neither Septon Eustace nor the fool Mushroom was present at the council. Yet Mushroom speaks of it all the same, saying, was there ever a man as devious as the clubfoot? Oh, he would have made a splendid fool, that one. The words dripped from his lips like honey from a comb, and never did poison taste so sweet. The enigma that is Larry Strong the clubfoot has vexed students of history for generations, and is not one we can hope to unravel here. Where did his true loyalty lie? What was he about? He wove his way all through the dance of the dragons, on this side and that side, vanishing and reappearing, yet somehow always surviving. How much of what he said and did was ruse, how much was real? Was he just a man who sailed with the prevailing wind, or did he know where he was bound when he set out? So may we ask, but none will answer. The last Strong keeps his secrets. We do know that he was sly, secretive, yet plausible and pleasant when need be. His words swayed the king and council in their course, when Queen Alicent demurred, wondering aloud how Lord Corlys could possibly be won back after all that had been said that day. Lord Strong replied, that task you may leave to me, your grace. His lordship will listen to me, I dare say.